What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews, exclusively here as always on the Casa D18 Studios channel. I, of course, am your host, the Renegade JJ Williams, and today we're going to stick around Gotham City, but we're going to transition from the dark to a little bit of a lighter side of Gotham City as we discuss 1995's Batman Forever, starring Val Kilmer, Tommy Lee Jones, Jim Carrey, Nicole Kidman, Chris O'Donnell, Michael Gough, Pat Hingle, Drew Barrymore, Debbie Mazar, and Ed Begley Jr. What's going on, everybody? Thank you for joining me here once again for another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews. And like I said during the introduction, today we're going to stick around Gotham City for a little bit longer, but it's not going to be as dark and gritty as the two previous entries, which were done by Tim Burton. Today marks the takeover of Joel Schumaker and a little bit of a more lighthearted, colorful, almost fun vibe, kind of hearkening back to the 60s Batman TV show, now in the Batman universe. And our film opens in Gotham City as Batman diffuses a hostage situation that has been orchestrated by the criminal known as Two-Face, formerly Gotham City District Attorney Harvey Dent. Two-Face was disfigured with acid by mob boss Sal Maroni and blames Batman as the Dark Knight failed to prevent it. We then meet Edward Nygma, an eccentric researcher who works at Wayne Enterprises and decides to approach his employer, Bruce Wayne, with an invention that can beam television signals directly into a person's brain. However, Bruce rejects the invention, stating his concern that the technology could potentially manipulate people's minds. Nygma kills his supervisor and stages it as a suicide before resigning from Wayne Enterprises and plotting his revenge against Bruce by sending him riddles. Nygma becomes diagnosed as psychotic from criminal psychologist Dr. Chase Meridian as a result. A few days later, Bruce attends a circus with Chase, but Two-Face hijacks the event and threatens to detonate a bomb unless Batman surrenders, figuring that someone in the audience either knows who Batman is or is Batman. Having been in the middle of performing when the hijacking occurred, the Flying Graysons leap into action to try and save the circus attendees. Dick Grayson, the youngest member of the family, manages to throw the bomb into the Gotham City River. But while he's disposing of the bomb, Two-Face kills his family. Bruce Wayne then volunteers to take Dick Grayson in, and eventually Dick discovers the Batcave, as well as Bruce's double identity, and demands to join Batman in crime fighting with the hopes of being able to kill Two-Face and get his revenge. But Bruce refuses the offer. Inspired by Two-Face, Nygma adopts his own criminal persona known as the Riddler and allies himself with Two-Face. Together, they begin to commit a series of robberies in order to finance Nygma's new company and mass produce his brainwave device, which is now being called the Box, which steals information directly from the user's minds and transfers it to Nygma's, with the side effect of the fact that it makes Nygma smarter in the process. At a mega party, Being hosted by Enigma, Batman pursues Two-Face and is almost killed, but is saved by Dick. Batman goes to visit Chase, who explains that she has fallen in love with Bruce, and he reveals to her his secret identity. The Riddler and Two-Face, having discovered Bruce's secret through the box, decide to blow up the Batcave, shoot Bruce, and kidnap Dr. Meridian. As Bruce recovers from the shooting, he and his butler Alfred deduce the fact that Edward Nygma is the Riddler. Realizing that 2-on-2 is better odds than 2-on-1, Bruce finally accepts Dick as his partner, going by the alias Robin. At the villain's lair, Robin is captured after deciding that Two-Face should go to jail instead of being killed. The Riddler then reveals to Batman that Chase and Robin are both trapped in tubes above a deadly drop, giving him the opportunity to save only one. Batman destroys the Riddler's brainwave receiver with the Batarang, which drains the Riddler's mind, allowing Batman to rescue both Chase and Robin. Two-Face then corners them and determines their fate by flipping a coin, but Batman, knowing that the coin is Harvey's Achilles heel, throws a handful of identical coins into the air, causing Two-Face to stumble in the confusion and fall to his death. Our film comes to its conclusion with Nygma committed to Arkham Asylum as he exclaims that he is Batman, while Bruce resumes his crusade as Batman with Robin at his side as his partner. We interrupt this episode of Renegades Reviews for an important announcement about
merchandising.
Merchandising? What's that?
Merchandising. Come, I'll show you. Merchandising, where the real money's made.
Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network for all the t-shirts you see here from the West Coast professor, Jeff Meacham himself. You can get shirts for the Jeff Meacham Network, Talk Wrestling, as well as the red and gold Meachamania shirts. And while you're there, don't forget to get your shirts of the Casa D18 Studios Brotherhood, the Dads on Wrestling shirt, the Renegade JJ Williams, Statboy Sports Bar, and the hashtag StatBoyApproved shirt. Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network and score your shirts today. Much like yesterday, I'm not going to lollygag. I'm not going to sit here and BS too much. Ladies and gentlemen, he had his grand reopening this week over on the Jeff Meacham Network. Please welcome to Renegades Reviews, the one, the only, the proprietor of Statboy's Sports Bar, Statboy Mike Caldwell himself. Statboy, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on once again. Glad to see that the sports bar is open back up for business.
Yes.
I would have had me a glass of something here, but too tired for all that.
I got you, boss. It's all good.
So, Batman Forever.
Right.
What is it about Batman Forever that made you want to come on to the show and discuss it? I mean, I think I know, but I want you to talk about it for the folks at home.
Well, the thing about this movie was we had the Keaton years, and before then it was just all Adam West. It was all the TV shows and that. Well, then Keaton comes in, and then we get Val Kilmer. And we've had this conversation of is he a better Batman or is he a better Bruce Wayne? With Kilmer, I want to say that he was a better Bruce Wayne.
I wholeheartedly agree with you. You know, nothing against Keaton's Bruce Wayne, but it was very flat and dull. And
Absolutely.
you expect Bruce Wayne to be a little bit more charismatic and not quite flamboyant, but a little bit more personality to him, as opposed to just being so humdrum.
Right. He definitely had the darkness that Batman needed. He kind of and I'm very glad, you know, in the later movies, and we'll discuss this with Dark Knight and Bale, and you know, I don't like it when Batman talks down here. I hate that, and I'll definitely bring that up later. But he had that darkness where you could still understand what he's saying, and he's getting his point across. And then of course with the villains, you know, we had Joker in the first one, we had Penguin and Catwoman in the second one. You had to follow suit and bring in the Riddler, which we all know is your favorite.
Yeah, if it wasn't 82 degrees out here at 9 o'clock at night as we're filming this, I'd be in my Riddler suit.
There you go.
Just too darn hot out here.
But bringing in Tommy Lee Jones as Two-Face, that was just an added bonus. You know, I almost want to say, and I'll ask you this, could the movie have worked without Two-Face and just be a standalone Batman versus Riddler?
I think so, because the Riddler, in my opinion, has always been the only villain on Bruce's intellectual level. And it's one of the things that I've always loved about the Riddler is that he didn't have to be super maniacal, super violent. Dude was a genius. He challenged Batman on an intellectual level.
Absolutely.
But without Two-Face, you wouldn't have needed Robin, I don't think. Because one-on-one, you know, I think Batman could have handled it. But two-on-one, you know, as Batman mentions when he finally gives in to Dick, you know, 2 and 2 are better than 2-on-1.
Right.
So, but I do definitely think that it could have worked if it was just Batman versus Riddler. But my question for you is, do you think it would have worked as good if Billy Dee had returned for Two-Face as opposed to the recast of Tommy Lee Jones? Because that's always been the controversial point in this film, or at least one of them, in my opinion, is that we already had Harvey in the films played by Billy Dee Williams. And then we finally get the transformation to Two-Face, and we go from, you know, Lando Calrissian to Tommy Lee Jones.
Yeah, I'm going to say no on that because I don't see Billy Dee as a villain, as that type of villain. I don't see him as having the split personality, the coin, there was a little bit of physicalness that Two-Face did need to have, albeit slight, because he really didn't physically fight. He just fired his guns left and right, which was a little bit sad because because Batman was fighting goons left and right. But my answer is no on that one. Tommy Lee Jones did an excellent performance, I believe. He has that tone in his voice, that creepiness, almost that rivals Batman. And you know, he played the suave, good Harvey Two-Face, and then switched to the maniacal side. I don't think Billy Dee could have pulled that off either. Billy Dee was always, you know, the cool sidekick in Star Wars, the cool guy that flew the Millennium Falcon in Jedi. I don't see him as the villain though, so I can't see it.
But that might have meant, good things for his career. I mean, you got to think a lot of people didn't see Michael Keaton as Batman. You're talking about Mr. Mom. You're talking about Beetlejuice. That guy is going to be Batman, and he's going to be a dark Batman, a brooding Batman.
He wasn't that dark, was he?
He was darker than Adam West.
Yes.
And that was what we had prior, as you had stated. That was the contrast. We went from Adam West to Michael Keaton. So in comparison, while it may not have been as dark as we got with Bale, it was a step towards the darkness. Michael Keaton really transformed into the Dark Knight, whereas Adam West had just been the Caped Crusader, if that makes any sense.
It does. It does. This was also the one. This was also the movie where the bat suit was enhanced, right? And that was a problem with the movie.
No, that didn't come until Batman and Robin.
Okay. Yeah. Let's not get started on Batman and Robin yet.
That's tomorrow. Let's not get into ourselves.
Okay.
But I mean, the fact that people like you don't think that Billy D could have done that, had he been given the opportunity and pulled it off, could have meant a huge resurgence for his career. Because you got to think, what really had Billy D done between Return of the Jedi and Batman?
Not much, if not anything.
I'm sure there were a few things, but it's not anything of real note because there's not anything that just jumps right off the page at you. Oh, well, he did this, this, and this. You could sit there and rattle off what Harrison Ford did between Jedi and, let's say, The Fugitive, which came out around the same time.
Right.
You could be like, oh, well, he did Witness, and he did, Raiders of the Lost Ark and Indiana Jones and blah, blah, blah. He had a bunch of films. Absolutely. But I think that if Billy D had been given the opportunity, it could have meant a huge resurgence for him, much like John Travolta had with Pulp Fiction.
I can agree with that, yes.
I mean, that's one of the reasons why I love the Lego Batman movie so much, is because Billy D finally got to be Two-Face. He was the voice of Two-Face in that.
Is that going to be part of your review?
Huh?
Are you going to review Lego Batman?
No, I'm only doing live action.
Okay.
Only doing live action. That's why I kind of turned down some of the other suggestions that you threw at me. Jim Carrey's the Riddler, though. Me and Jeff were discussing yesterday when we did Batman Returns. I had come up with and found online a list of people that had been considered for the Penguin before DeVito, who eventually ended up getting the role, obviously. And you sit there and you try to think of what those actors could have been like in that role, and it's such a definitive DeVito role. Aside from Robin Williams, who I know had been talked about as a potential for the Riddler prior to Jim Carrey getting it, can you imagine anybody else really in that role of the Riddler?
Honestly,
at that time, 1995, you got to keep in mind the era.
I am trying right now to picture Robin Williams.
I can't hear you. You might be covering your microphone.
Darn it. I'm trying to picture Robin Williams as the Riddler, and he just wasn't dark enough. Because, he's definitely funny enough. I get it. He definitely would have had the mannerisms, but I don't see him as the villain. I always see him as the comedic sidekick. I don't think he could have pulled off all the cane twirling. I don't think he could have done that. I don't think he's that physical of a person. Could he have done the intellectual style of the Riddler? Yes, but I think also his improv skills would have caused a big problem on the set, especially in a Batman movie.
Well, I mean, there already were supposed issues between Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones. That's been well documented and talked about for years, that Tommy Lee Jones just did not like Jim's antics.
But they worked so well on camera. Two-Face and Riddler, they worked well off of each other, especially in the scene. You know, hey Two-Face, show me how to punch a guy. It's dirt simple, my boy. That's one of the best playoff scenes ever. But wow, I honestly don't remember that story, and that's kind of a little hard to believe. What did he do that was so bad that? Are we talking like what he would do years later as Man on the Moon and just get so into character that he would tick off Tommy Lee?
I don't remember the specifics, but let's just say it was Jim being 90s Jim. I mean, think about how insane and silly he is in Ace Ventura, The Mask, Dumb and Dumber, and figure that this came right after those.
Right.
So if you think of that Jim Carrey, and then you're trying to put him along someone who's a little bit more of a serious actor in Tommy Lee Jones. You know, when you think of Tommy Lee Jones, you usually don't think of something like a Two-Face. So that was actually really off a type for him too, and a risk, because he just doesn't have that vibe about him, I don't think, where you would imagine him in a campy supervillain role. Because you got to remember, this is the Schumacher Batmans. This isn't Burton. Tommy Lee Jones, I think, would have been better suited for a Burton Batman movie as opposed to the more lighthearted Schumaker-Verse. We interrupt this episode of Renegades Reviews for an important announcement about
merchandising.
Merchandising? What's that?
Merchandising. Come, I'll show you. Merchandising, merchandising, where the real money's made.
Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network for all the t-shirts you see here from the West Coast professor, Jeff Meacham himself. You can get shirts for the Jeff Meacham Network, Talk Wrestling, as well as the red and gold Meachamania shirts. And while you're there, don't forget to get your shirts of the Casa D18 Studios Brotherhood, the Dads on Wrestling shirt, the Renegade JJ Williams, Statboy Sports Bar, and the hashtag Statboy Approved shirt. Make sure you go over to teespring.com/stores/Jeff Meacham Network and score your shirts today.
Was there an issue between the two directors?
No, I think it was more of a matter of, if I remember correctly, it was Warner Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
They wanted to merchandise more and try to gear the movies more towards kids so they could get Happy Meal toys and action figures and blah, 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 Batcave playset. And with the darkness and the tone of Penguin's Oswald Cobblepot, Jack Nicholson's Joker, it's kind of hard to market that towards kids. But Jim Carrey's the Riddler, Arnold Schwarzenegger's Mr. Freeze.
Merchandising.
Exactly. Where the real money's made.
Yeah.
You know? So those type of characters you can kind of gear more towards the kiddies, if you will.
Right.
And that's why there was such a tonal shift in between the two movies. And I just recently discovered that supposedly it's not all the same connected universe.
Oh,
Supposedly the Schumachers are an alternate universe to the Burtons. The Burton verse is considered Batman 89, and the Schumachers is Batman 97.
gotcha.
But I find a hard time in believing that because, number one, Alfred and Commissioner Gordon are the same actor throughout all 4 movies.
Yes.
And in this one, Chase Meridian makes a reference to Catwoman.
Skin tight leather and a whip.
So if they're alternate universes, how do those connect?
Who knows? Who knows? Excuse me.
Another thing that I want to bring up about Batman Forever is, and no disrespect to the legend that is Prince, but the soundtrack for Batman Forever was phenomenal.
Oh yeah, you couldn't turn your radio on without listening to Kiss from a Rose. It was on everywhere.
Or Hold Me, Thrill Me, Kiss Me, Kill Me by U2.
Yeah.
Or the hip-hop channels were playing Method Man's The Riddler.
Right.
You know, like this soundtrack was on fire. Like there was not a soundtrack for Returns, just the score.
That's right.
The original had both the score and the Prince soundtrack, which had a few hits off of it. But dare I say that with the turn to the Schumaker-Verse, the soundtracks became just as much of an integral point in the movie and the merchandising because the soundtracks were just incredible.
Pick up your copy of the Batman Forever soundtrack only at Sam Goody.
Dude, I had it.
Yes, you
I had
did.
it on CD, and I even think I had it on audio cassette.
Wow.
Never had it on vinyl because vinyl wasn't that popular back then. It was kind of that in-between spell for vinyl, but I know I had it on CD, and I think I had it on cassette.
That was definitely one of your major CDs. You would play that CD every chance you could.
Because it was good.
It
What
was.
can I say? I mean,
it was one of the best.
Chris O'Donnell's Robin, I don't think gets the credit it deserves.
I can agree with that, and I also don't think that he understood the legacy of the role because, I mean, he had all the hype going into it. I remember he did something with Oprah, I think, when he was introduced or whatever. He did an interview with them. But if you talk to him about it now, I don't think he gravitates to the legacy of the character. He's like, that would be an honor to play Robin.
Well, but you've got to keep in mind, like, hindsight being what it is, Forever and Batman and Robin are, as far as critically, looked at as the weaker movies.
Mm-hmm. I can
So,
understand.
being who he is now in Hollywood, he's probably tried to distance himself from it. But I feel like he doesn't get the credit that he deserves because Chris O'Donnell's Robin was a serious high point, I feel, in both films. You know, in this one, you've got the introduction of the Flying Graysons. You've got the death of his family. You've got him kind of rebelling a little bit, wanting to go out on his own, but realizing that, you know, maybe there's something to sticking around here at Wayne Manor. Discovering the Batcave,
Yep.
joyriding in the Batmobile,
Going for a little ride in my love machine, baby.
saving Batman's life, and then the struggle internally between killing Two-Face and getting his revenge and putting Two-Face away and letting justice handle it.
Yeah.
And then when you get to Batman and Robin, you've got the entire jealousy angle between Batman and Robin as a result of Poison Ivy.
Right. And then, of course,
I honestly feel that like the Dick Grayson Robin stuff, that timeline is some of the best stuff within both movies.
I can agree with that.
You know,
I totally can.
Considering what everyone thinks about those movies now, like I highly recommend giving them another watch and just looking at Chris's performance, because in a lot of ways, I feel like he saves the movies.
Yes.
Like if he was not in there and it was just Val or Clooney, I think the films would have gone to hell.
Oh yeah. They had to bring in extra star power and extra characters to distract you temporarily from.
It's like a magic act, you know, sleight of hand. Like, oh, look what I'm doing over here. Look what I'm doing over here. Oh, bam.
Absolutely, good call. Well said.
Well, I know it's getting late for you, and I'm pretty tired myself, sir. So let's start to wrap this up. You know how I do my ratings. 5 stars is the best. You can give halves. You can't give quarters or 3/4. Stat Boy, where do you put Batman Forever out of 5 stars?
I'm going to go 4.5.
Okay. And why?
I would have liked to see Val continue on into the next one. I would have wanted to see a little bit more of Batman being a badass. You know, I mean, the whole thing with Chase Meridian, you know, kissing Batman and then smiling after it, that didn't really need to take place. I'm not disrespecting Nicole Kidman. She was a beautiful person back then. She's still beautiful now. But that whole scene where he gets kissed and then smiles and jumps off, you know, I can't say it's my favorite because, you know, my favorite's coming up, and so I have to take it down just a little notch.
Well, the whole purpose of the smile is because she's realized that she prefers Bruce to the Bat, and he knows that he wins either way.
Right.
So that's the whole purpose behind the smile. I always thought that was kind of a cool little, you know, nod, break the fourth wall bit to the audience there.
The car, right?
For me, I give Batman Forever 5 out of 5. Okay. I mean, I know that a lot of people out there hold this one down, you know, don't hold it in the same esteem as the 2 Burton ones, but for me, it always has come down to my favorite villain is in it, the Riddler. I've always been a fan of Val Kilmer. I mean, going back, Top Gun, Willow, Thunderheart, The Doors, Tombstone. You know, Val Kilmer and his roles really defined my childhood and my teenage years. So even though he was not the greatest Batman, as we said, he was probably the best Bruce Wayne in the series between the 4 Burton Schumacher films. And then, like I said, Chris O'Donnell really was the glue that helped anchor this film and make Batman and Robin watchable. And we'll get more into detail tomorrow there when I get to that.
And if it wasn't for Two-Face and flipping the coin, that's what's caused my obsession with $50 50-cent pieces and flipping coins.
It's Two-Face?
That's Two-Face, yes. It's not scratched like his. It's about, I would assume it's the same size of a coin. But once I saw him flipping the coin, I'm like, I have to copy that. That is badass. So
See, I've always wanted to learn how to do Val's coin trick like Doc does in Tombstone, making it walk down his knuckles.
Oh,
I
and the same
just
thing with the same thing with the poker chips in poker. So, yeah, that's difficult. We never could figure that part out.
We've teased it a couple times. Tomorrow, right back here on the Casa D18 Studios channel. Make sure you tune in for another brand new installment of Renegades Reviews when we take a look at the last film in the Burton Schumacher Batman verse, Batman and Robin, starring George Clooney, Chris O'Donnell, Arnold Schwarzenegger, Alicia Silverstone, Uma Thurman, Pat Hingle, Michael Gough, and so many others. You're not going to want to miss out tomorrow, right back here on the Casa D18 Studios channel as we wrap up this part of the Batman story. And we've still got way more to come because we've got the Dark Knight trilogy coming down the road, and we've got the films with Ben Affleck as Batman coming after that. So there's a lot of Batman action still to come on the channel. Statboy, congratulations on reopening the sports bar.
Thank you, sir.
You check them out every Tuesday, 4 p.m. Pacific, 7 p.m. Eastern Time on the Jeff Meacham Network for Statboy Sports Bar. Pour yourself a frosty cold beverage, or a couple of shots. Grab yourself some peanuts and pretzels and take in the scores, highlights, and stats from the week of football. Anything else you'd like to throw out there, Stat Boy, before we wrap it up?
Holy rusted metal, Batman!
All right. So to all my loyal fans and viewers out there that have been tuning in for the premiere, leaving your thoughts and comments way over there next to Stat Boy, thank you very much. Greatly appreciate each and every one of you. Likewise, all my loyal fans and viewers out there tuning in a little bit later in the day, watching on demand, leaving your thoughts and comments down here. Thank you very much. Appreciate each and every one of you. Appreciate all my loyal fans and viewers out there that tune in on a regular basis, watch the shows, show me that love and support. Thank you all for watching, and I will see you guys next time.